Spidey goes on the assault. Here's your look at the new Hasbro Spider-Man Far From Home Web Strike Spider-Man. Peter Parker gears up in an upgraded spider suit to battle his foes. Okay, far be it from me to give away the ending of a story, but I gotta tell you guys right now, this review is not gonna shape up all that well. Before I get into disclosing why I feel that way, let me go ahead and tell you that the Ultra Measure-tron tells us that this Spider-Man, Web Strike Spider-Man to be exact, is 5.7 inches in height, which in centimeters, we'll go ahead and do that right now, 14.5 centimeters tall. Okay, so let's do some size comparisons. Now, being that this is the Stealth Suit Spider-Man, I figured it would be best to bring in the Stealth Suit Spider-Man. That's a lot of S's that we had looked at in the previous video. Now, it's about the same height, roughly, although the Web Strike Spider-Man is a little bit taller, and he is pre-posed. That's one of the unfortunate sad things about this particular figure, and a couple of other size comparisons. We just recently had a look at this one. I feel like it was just the last review. Maybe it was just the last review, depending on when I put it up. This was the Ultimate Crawler Spider-Man. Not a bad Spider-Man, and actually I just kept the hook on him for the time being, but it's probably going to come off. And another size comparison. Here is the Concept Series, the Glider. Can't remember what this one was called. I think it was like the Stealth Glider Spider-Man. I'm sure somebody will tell me. But those are the figures, kind of an idea, a rough idea of how tall these figures are to one another. Now, obviously, the big glaring, elephant in the room is the Web Strike Spider-Man. Probably for the fact that you're seeing his legs, and for the fact he's got these weird-looking web, nunchucks in his hand. Let's discuss further. Yes, let's discuss further the Web Strike Spider-Man. Now, obviously, this is the same costume as the one that we had looked at before, although the problem with it, I don't know if you would consider these to be deluxe class figures. These ones are the ones that are a little bit more influenced by gimmicks, and this one is very heavily gimmicked. Unfortunately, one of the big draws kind of pulling away from this being a decent enough figure is the fact that his legs are pre-posed, pre-bent. And a lot of that, primarily in this leg right here, falls so heavily on the fact that it has to do this gimmick. And what exactly is this gimmick? Well, we'll talk about that in a second. Let's have a look at the figure first and foremost. It's a rough, well, you know what? Let's bring him back in. I mean, obviously, if I'm going to be doing some discussions about it, let's talk a little bit about the comparisons. It looks like it is probably the exact same head. The body, it would be a little bit changed, although the torso looks to be about the same. Pretty much from the waist down, this is where a lot of surgical deconstruction and reconstruction has been involved. Primarily, I'm probably thinking that the head is probably reused, judging by the way these two look side by side, and everything else has been scrapped in favor of the gimmick. As for it goes for the figure, there's not really much additional color. I mean, you get a little bit of silver here, a little bit of silver here, and of course also in the eyes. He does, at least to his credit, he gets a little bit of the flesh tone applied to his fingers, because if not for that, this figure would be all black, which is it's not a bad thing, but unfortunately, when you start looking at a figure like this, then all the shortcomings come into play. So, unfortunately, because this figure is so heavily gimmicked, his posability almost ceases to exist. His head rotates all the way around. I mean, we can talk about this right now. And it hinges up and down very, very, very slightly. Very, very, very slightly. And for some strange reason, he's got a swivel on one of his legs. I don't even know why it had to be the case. Why would you even display this Spider-Man with some janky-looking leg like this? I mean, obviously, you're going to have the leg straight forward. If this added to the cost of what I already feel isn't too inexpensive of a figure for what little it actually does, I would have been fine if you had just simply removed this altogether and just had one molded piece with all the gimmicks sitting right here. Now, because the gimmick is in this leg, one can't also help but notice that it looks like he's got an extra leg that's been attached to his body. I mean, literally, that's really what it boils down to. But it does make, unfortunately, his leg look like it sticks out, like he's wearing thigh-high boots, which I know is not really necessarily the case, but that's what it ultimately looks like. There's a hinge right there that will come into play. You're basically going to be squeezing this guy together via his leg, or his one leg, and it's going to be swinging back and forth, what I can only describe as these sort of web nunchuck. He's got two of them, and they look a little on the ridiculous side. They are made of a soft plastic, so you're not luckily going to be hurting anybody in the process. But I just don't get what this figure is supposed to be. Spider-Man clearly will have this in the film. Probably not necessarily sporting things like this. I mean, kind of just looks like he's squeezing these tubes of almost Pillsbury dough, and it's just squirted itself out. I mean, I guess they've put the sculpting in the web, so I mean, there is something. But I really almost feel like I just don't get why this has to exist. What are we looking at right here? Are these two parts, like, were these at one point connected together? They have now spread apart, and then there's webbing in between. I have no idea what this is supposed to be. At the very least, they should have just made all of this webbing. Granted, it would still look ridiculous. It would look like he's got marshmallow whips, but still, I would be able to explain that a little bit better than what I'm trying to do my best here to explain when it has these two canisters. Again, I don't know what this is supposed to be. The other posability, I guess, in some ways that the Spider-Man does have is that you can rotate the arm. Now, depending on where you snap the arm back will sort of be the starting point when you eventually trigger the feet together. And why don't we go ahead and do that right now? Yes, this is all. I mean, I could do this for 5 minutes. You could head off to the bathroom, come back, you would have missed absolutely nothing. The only other thing it does do is, again, depending on where you put those arms. So if I bring these arms down, again, where the placement of the arms will determine which direction he's going to be swinging, and I guess the difference in the different, shooting or swinging these web nunchucks back and forth. I did actually technically leave off one point. He does have swivels also in the wrists. Now you can probably already see what ends up being the result of this with swiveling wrists. They almost don't even help the figure. They more so actually hinder the figure, because if you swivel these inward, now all of a sudden you've got these webs that are they're not getting in the way of one another, but they're certainly also blocking one another also. So depending on, again, which way you swing these arms will determine. I guess this is more the conventional way of doing it. At the very least, I wouldn't say that this Spider-Man is Happy Meal level. I mean, if it was a Happy Meal toy, it would be probably a little bit smaller, maybe even cruder in the way of its sculpt. But it's only like a few notches. It might even be just one notch higher than a fast food premium or fast food Happy Meal toy. It does have, I suppose, the old vintage appeal. I mean, this sort of brought me back to the days of having the old Superpowers figures where there was always a gimmick. But there was still something appealing about those particular figures. I just don't find I'm getting it here with this Spider-Man. I don't even get why he has to have these nunchucks to start off with. And then on top of that, being that you've given him a gimmick, you've pretty much eliminated all the other play value in having this toy. It's pre-posed in the legs, so it's always going to be crouched down, very awkwardly crouched down. And they unfortunately just sort of tease you with the idea that this guy should also have posability. And he really doesn't. He's got posability in only really his head and his wrists and his one leg. But his leg is useless. Why swivel that? His wrists, I suppose, are the only beneficiary to having this be successful. And I guess he does have some head posability as well. But he's just a mess of a figure. Really, again, I would probably have paid $5. I can't even get this guy to stand now. Probably would have paid, maybe questioned anything more than $5 to pick up this guy. But I think the price point, in all honesty, if I can be frank with you guys, The Web Strike Spider-Man. I think it was closer to about a $12 figure. $12 he certainly is not. Perhaps Ultimate Climber, or what was it, Ultimate Crawler Spider-Man. Maybe I could justify spending that price point. But a swiveling arm on this particular Spider-Man not only is ridiculous, because now I have to try to explain what's going on with these nunchucks, but it just feels like a cheap toy. A total pass, if you ask me. Ouch, reviewer, tell us what you really think. I know this was unfortunately a bit of a harsher video. I mean, in retrospect, looking at this figure now in final looks, maybe I was a little too hard on it. But it's a figure I honestly don't think needed to exist. I don't see the relevance of having this one sitting on the shelves. Granted, yes, I know with all of these toys, they're geared towards kids. Maybe kids would want nunchuck swinging Spider-Man. I personally don't see there's a need for it myself, and I really think the price point of the $12 to $14 for these Spider-Man figures is way too high for what you're getting with this Spider-Man. It's really high altogether for the other Spider-Man figures, but to their credit, at least they have additional posability. This one, unfortunately, does have very limited posability, and what posability it does have, I scratch my head, like, that swiveling leg. What's the point of that swiveling? It's only on one leg. Why? Why does that need to be there? Either way, if you guys are interested, I don't know why you would want to, but if you are looking to pick this one up for yourself, maybe because you just like the old kind of kung fu fighting figures of the 80s, and maybe you want to get a Spider-Man that does the same. Some good news, my friends. The Web Strike Spider-Man should be available now in retail stores and toy stores alike. Personally, I would pass on this figure, and if not for simply reviewing this and showing you guys some of the cooler and not so cooler toys available on shelves right now, I probably wouldn't have picked this one up for myself. Either way, guys, let me know down below in the comments section what you think of Web Strike Spider-Man. Did you think this guy was a little hard on the figure? And really, what's the deal with those web nunchucks? It looks like a canister of marshmallow fluff that Spidey has squeezed way too hard, and it shot out from his hand. Marshmallow fluff. It looks, now I want marshmallow fluff. Either way, guys, let me know down below in the comment section what you think of this figure. And if you are new to this channel and haven't done so already, make sure you turn on that subscribe button. I don't know if you can really turn on, kind of click the subscribe button and make sure you turn on, there you go, your notification, to turn on the bell notification. Make sure that when new videos are coming onto this channel, you'll never miss out. We're going to have a look at some hopefully not as disappointing Spider-Man Far From Home toys coming up in future reviews, so stay tuned for that. And thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.